And so everybody is fully included in society and can participate meaningfully.
Mm.
And that is DEI.
Welcome back. Another week in Luke, because we are just living in Luke until the end of Easter, basically, or at least the week after Easter. Okay, hi, Reverend Jim, Minister of Digital Worship Education, joined by Reverend Mira Soalani, joiner. Mira, great to have you back. You have done this before. You're a veteran at all things Riverside. So first, I never know how to say it right. What's your title at Riverside again?
It's a long one. Minister of Justice, Advocacy, and Change. See, I almost tripped up.
Yep. You do a lot of
Lovingly
things.
known as MJAC.
MJAC, Minister of Justice, Advocacy, and Change. I like
That's
that.
correct.
MJAC. All right. So you are keeping us in all the ways that a church should be just connected to justice, advocacy, and change. Insider hint for everybody, Mira's job is not to do all that for us. She leads the way so we can all do it together. Just a quick reminder, you don't get to just offload your justice work to the person you hire. That's not how this job works. And you are in the pulpit this Sunday. So I'm guessing there might be a little justice, advocacy, and change lens that comes in, because you tend to see the world through those fantastically colored glasses. You are preaching the middle of Luke 7. So this is the first time I think we get like broken up chapter, where last week was the first few parts, this week's the middle, next week's the end of Luke 7. We are just living in Luke 7. And we were just saying before we hit record that this is a unique portion. What's going on in this part of Luke 7 verses 18 to 35? Give us the Cliff Notes version, and maybe reference the part that really confused us that you're not even going to talk about.
Yeah, so the chapter opens with John the Baptist. We have to go a few chapters back to remember that John the Baptist is in prison. He's been imprisoned, and he is probably wondering what's going on. I paved the way for this Jesus to come to save us all, and I'm sitting here in prison. What's happening? And sends two messengers to go find out. Was that Jesus, the guy that we were expecting? Did we make a mistake here? Are we supposed to wait for someone else? What's up? And so the two messengers go talk to Jesus and ask him, are you the one we've been waiting for? Are we supposed to prepare for someone else? Is there someone else that's supposed to come? And Jesus gets them to just watch the good works, come witness all the good works I'm doing, the healing that I'm doing, and take that message back to John the Baptist. And then he has then he starts talking in very poetic ways about John the Baptist and the people, and
Yeah.
Pharisees are mad. And then I'm like, what is happening here?
So we're going to leave you all to read the second half for yourself. It's interesting. I mean, I think one thing I read about it, it's this interesting like divide of the first portion is John sending people to say, who is Jesus? Who are you? And then Jesus is like, well, let me ask, who is John? And he just spends all this time riffing on who is John, which is like, we'll leave some Bible scholars to really dive into that. Yeah. We're probably going to look at the first half, because that seems like there's something to really hold on to in that first
Exactly.
portion.
That's how I felt as well. Yeah.
I find it interesting that Jesus doesn't really answer the question. They clearly say, are you the one who is to come, or are we to expect someone else?
Yeah.
It's a yes or no question. And Jesus is kind of like, let me give you a, sidestep narrative answer.
Yeah, but isn't that what Jesus does a lot? He never gives us the full answer, but we seem to think we know the answer, which I think is what Jesus is challenging here.
That's a whole sermon.
Yes,
right
exactly.
there.
And it could be the sermon. You'll have to listen to it to see if that's what the sermon's about. But that is what Jesus is challenging, because John has a notion of who that person is.
Yeah.
What the Messiah is supposed to do, and what salvation looks like. So John is sitting there in prison going, Jesus, where are your soldiers? Where's your army? I thought you were going to save us from the oppression that we're experiencing by the Roman Empire. I thought you were going to overthrow them and establish the kingdom of Israel. What is going on here? And because John, as well as the Pharisees, as well as like most of the religious folks at that time, in that specific historical context, had this view that a single person would come and save them all. And they had thought that way about all the kings. The king would rise up and overthrow the oppressive empire. It was the Babylonian Empire before, it was the Egyptian Empire before. At this moment, it's the Roman Empire. And there were other empires, Assyrian Empire at one point,
American Empire. Let's not forget that
the
one.
British Empire. Look, we're not going into
Okay,
the
okay.
modern context just yet. So they're expecting a single leader to rise up. But Jesus goes, are you sure? Is that what it is? Or is it this? And demonstrates, I think, a way in which to view, number one, what salvation looks like, and also challenges this perception that salvation comes through one person.
Okay, we've just already probably written like 2.5 sermons now, so good luck choosing. The biggest challenge often is preaching just one sermon at a time. And yes, yes. Oh, there's so much to this. And yeah, my mind was going to some of this as well, just the sense of expectations. Like, what are we expecting? What are we waiting for? What are you looking for? I think it's a cognitive thing where you find what you're looking for. Like if you close your eyes and you say a color a dozen times and you open your eyes, you'll just see that color more. Not because the
Mhm.
color suddenly appeared, but you've primed your mind to just be more attuned to noticing it. Like this literally works. People should just try this. Pause the video, go try it.
That's prayer.
Um, yeah,
Another sermon.
there we go. But it's the sense that John was looking for a certain kind of Messiah, and he's like,
That's
wait, is Jesus fitting? Is Jesus the Messiah I'm looking for? And it's interesting, Jesus' answer, he has this whole list of like, well, here I've cured the blind, I've healed the sick, I've preached this to the good news to the poor, which in some ways is a parallel to what he read in the Isaiah scroll in chapter 4, where he's quoting Isaiah. He has, but not all of it. He misses the set the captives free, which if
Yes,
John is a prisoner in captivity, he's like, wait a minute, there's kind of one item on the top of my list. Can you get me out of prison? Because that seems to
yeah,
be a messianic expectation that I have for you that you haven't
yeah,
done yet. So
yeah.
I
And
just,
there's tension there. So I'm gonna bring us back gently into the modern day,
okay.
because we too have this view and expectation of a single person setting us free or
Do
fixing
we?
all the
Yeah.
problems.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
November we did.
Oh,
In
everyone did.
November, everyone that I know expected for a single, actually, everyone thought a single leader. Every single person in the United States that voted expected a single leader to fix everything,
Yep.
whether
Price
it
of eggs
was
going down, solve these problems.
exactly,
Probably we're going
exactly.
to still not solve everything in the Middle East. We were going to still, but that's another conversation. But yeah.
Yeah, but we expected this single person to fix everything.
Yep. Yep.
Now, in the justice work that I do, I will often hear, no matter what I often heard, and especially as we prepared for the election and beyond, we did this as a church, is to remember that whatever happens, whatever the election results would be, that the work would still continue. There was already that expectation. And I think some of that is echoed in Isaiah as well. Whatever happens, the work has to still continue. These the prisoners will still need to be set free. The people who are being oppressed will still we still need to dismantle the systems. And Jesus pointed back to that. Now the tension in Jesus withholding saying setting the prisoners free, I think reminds us of the time we are in right now. And I think it's humbling because John was personally invested in Jesus, knowing that Jesus was fulfilling a prophecy. So John had a personal investment because he wanted to be set free. Um, but sometimes the things that we're doing right now as individuals, we're not going to see the fruits of that until much later on. And that's hinted at in this passage as well, much later. It's hinted at, but wisdom is proved right by all her children. So we may not see it in our generation, but for sure the next generation will experience it, a taste of it. The generation after will continue to experience it, and so on and so forth. So that's the tension there.
There's so much, and I love that you pull out that portion, that verse 35, the section we said we weren't even going to look at, because that's one of those like quotes from Jesus that we should say more often. Wisdom is vindicated by all her children. Jesus said that. It's right here. It's in the
That's
book.
right. That's right. And it's why we
And
shouldn't, John need not lose hope,
yeah,
even if his circumstances cannot be changed for himself in that moment. And neither should we stop our justice work, even if the person we're helping or us ourselves, the conditions won't change for us in this moment. We must keep pursuing freedom, liberation, justice. We have to keep pursuing it for the generation that follows, and they carry on the mantle, because it is humbling to know that we are the sole keepers of justice. Me as an individual, I'm not going to fix everything. Whichever president is not going to fix everything. It takes the collective to bring liberation. And liberation, salvation is all about the collective, not the individual. And I think this is, so I'm going to jump back to the historical context. This is how Jesus' ministry has sometimes been misinterpreted, because Jesus has healed individuals, right? And healed individuals, made the individual blind person able to see again, the individual deaf person able to hear again. Now, when we look at that through a modern lens, we assume the fault is with the individual, and to fix that, liberation and salvation means fixing that individual. But, and this goes the same with the historical context, that's also why these communities, the disabled community, poor communities, poor and low income communities were marginalized, is because there was this perception that the fault is within them. Oh, they mustn't work hard enough, or clearly their family has been cursed, or they've been cursed, and that's why they have this disability. And that's a very ableist view of what justice looks like. But I think what Jesus is doing in healing the blind, I'm going to come back to that, healing the blind, restoring sight, restoring hearing, is actually restoring it for all of the community. Because what healing should look like is creating a world in which the blind can still participate fully in society, so that the change isn't needed for that individual, but that but all of society should change to accommodate the individual so that they can participate fully. That's actually what restoration looks like. And the same to here, for all of society to make it possible so that a deaf person can fully participate in society, because
yeah,
the fault is not with the deaf person,
yep.
if that makes sense.
Oh,
So in
totally.
that sense, we will all be able to see and hear, because the ways in which we have been, using an ableist world for a moment here, blinded by or have deaf ears to a view of justice, is now being unlocked. Now we can see, now we can hear by way of the blind and the deaf. I just realized I spoke in a very convoluted way. But by way of the deaf and the blind, we're able to see where we have been,
Yeah.
unable to see and hear as well.
Whew.
No, that's a lot.
No, this is okay. First off, please write a book on this. Second off, this sermon's going to be phenomenal. Third, oh my goodness, there's so much here.
So much,
This.
so much, so much. And then, so I'm going to take it back. I'm going to go somewhere else now. And this is the sermon is going to take us here. So this is how we've treated the disabled community. This is also how we've treated BIPOC folks, women, LGBTQ people, LGBTQIA plus people. This is how we've treated migrants. This is how we've treated people who have been incarcerated and are currently being incarcerated. The fault has to be with them. Oh, it has to be because they didn't work hard enough. Poor folks, they didn't work hard enough. They didn't stick with their jobs. It's always the fault of the individual. But Jesus calls us into a broader ministry that doesn't just help the individual. And the reason why the religious folks were so angry at the time is because they were forced into shifting their worldview. Because Jesus goes on to heal heal people that the religious folks had never been in contact with. So they're angry that Jesus is healing on the Sabbath. Minister Healy talked about that. But really what they're angry about is that they didn't do the healing, and it's not for us as individuals to do that work, but it's to pave the way so that all of society changes its structures and systems so that we can accommodate everybody. And so everybody is fully included in society and can participate meaningfully. And that is DEI.
Whew. Yes.
So
Yes.
DEI is in fact kingdom building.
Yeah.
So the fracturing of DEI right now is doing the opposite of Jesus's ministry. And the way that our current administration is behaving, is acting, the executive orders that our administration is trying to put in place, the points of view being the ideology that's being held by many others opposed to DEI, is actually what our the Pharisees were the same Pharisees, the same sentiment echoed by religious people in this historical context.
What's frightening is it's now just being said so loudly. Like it's been here all along, but it's been whispered. Like the desire for homogeneity, prejudice, and exclusion, the opposite of diversity, equity, and inclusion, has been the marching orders of certain people in positions of power and privilege for a long, long time. And now they're just saying it from the most powerful desks in an office that's oval shaped. Now they're just, suddenly an unelected vice president named Elon Musk who can get my social security number for some reason. All these individuals in such ridiculous positions of power are saying out loud what's been whispered in a dog whistle for so long. It's not like it's new, but it's so there's a new reality when it's just they are enabled to say it so loudly, and that just feels like, how do we impact the systems when it feels like the people with all the positions of power are just running it with whatever they want it to be to make a world in their image rather than the world as it truly.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's truly preposterous, because what does my skin color, my gender identity, what does that have anything to do with the quality of work that I can deliver if I meet the minimum expectations? It's such a myth that the standards are being lowered just to allow for DEI hires is a huge myth, because those standards still have to be met.
I mean, just to sit into this rant for a minute, the only people who typically, and studies have shown, have gotten jobs without being qualified are the white straight men who just get the jobs based often on nepotism or insider connections or whatever favors. I don't need to be qualified because I'm a white man, therefore I'm qualified by default. No. We all need it to be based on merit. The problem is so many people have just been given the position because fame and celebrity makes them a household name, and we want them to be in office because they're going to shake things up with their red hat. No, you need to be qualified for the job.
Exactly. And Jim, something I want to add is DEI is not an attack on white men either.
No.
Actually, white men can stand to gain from DEI efforts, because you're a dad, right, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
DEI policies will allow for you to stay home and take care of your kids when you need to.
Yeah.
Will allow you to have a flexible work schedule so you can go and pick up your kids. Will allow you to be more engaged as a parent, and that's good for you.
That's good for everybody. It's good for the kids. It's good for the family, the community. We're all winning as a result of that. But that's a shift in the 1960s myth of misogyny that says the man is the head of the house who goes off and makes the money and comes back to have dinner prepared and 2.5 kids waiting to greet him with a smile. It's like, that was always a myth. Leave It to Beaver was a fictional reality that we tried to perpetuate as in our world. And we can't even go back to that today ever. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. You're going to fix this in your sermon, right? One sermon is going to be the Messiah that solves all our problems.
Me as an individual, clearly, I'm going to save the world.
See what I did there? I just kind of,
I'm picking up what you put down.
Yeah. The other thing, okay, the other thing I had in my mind with this too, you talked about, and this was, I think, a great thing to notice, that we often place the blame of poverty, disability, all these things on the individual. Like, oh, you must have done something wrong. We also do the opposite. We praise the success of the individual. Oh, you're so rich, you must have done something right. We ignore the system that all they're also benefiting from. Like, so the systems create these realities of oppression, and they create these realities of just privilege that some get
That's
access
right.
to and others don't even. So there's all of that needs to be dismantled. When we make
That's
it
right.
about the individual, we're missing the point entirely. It's a systemic issue on both sides, and there
That's
needs
right.
to be some way to.
Absolutely. No
Yeah,
one challenges that, but Jesus
yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah,
Jesus challenged, like, why are we here? How did we get here to a place where you get everything you want, and then you yell at me when I try to feed my
yeah,
disciples. You yell at me because I'm trying to heal somebody. How did
yeah.
we get here?
Well, I'm so eager. I'm so sure everyone watching and listening is too, to see where this leads in the pulpit. This will not be the one sermon that solves everything. You will not be the one pastor or human who fixes the world's problems, because that's
Thank
kind of the
God.
point. Yeah, too much pressure. But maybe all of us collectively can make a dent in that
Amen.
long moral arc of the universe that keeps bending towards justice. I wish it wasn't always so long sometimes, but
Yeah, but there's
that's,
humility there in
yeah.
waiting and hoping
Mm.
for the wisdom to, what is the what come on, for wisdom to be proved right by
Oh,
all her
yeah.
children. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, someone put that on a poster. That's a good one. Thanks, Jesus. All right, Mira, this is going to be great. Join us on Sunday to hear where this all lands in the pulpit. So everyone knows the drill. We get things started with open Bible study at 9:30 in the room and on Zoom. Join us either way. Worship starts at 11. Special music at 10:30. For those online, we'll have virtual coffee hour afterwards. We'll talk more with Reverend Mira about the sermon she ends up preaching, so that's always a treat. And we just hope you can join us. trcnyc.org is where you can find all the information of how to get to the building or how to join us online. And then we'll be back the following week with a guest preacher, so stay tuned for that conversation in a week from now. Until then, Mira, thanks for this. Really cannot wait to hear where you take this in a sermon. I think we all are going to just be so ready for where that's going to lead us towards. And thanks for chatting right now. See you next
Thank
time.
you so much, Jim. Take care.